Well, the big news in Washington today is not BDS. It's former special counsel Robert Mueller testifying to Congress. Democrats subpoenaed him to answer questions about his investigation into the Trump campaign and charges of collusion with Russia. Well, joining us to talk about the potential fallout is CBN's chief political analyst, David Brody. And David, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Gordon.
Mueller didn't want to testify. He had to be subpoenaed, and now he's sort of locked into the four corners of his report. What are the Democrats hoping for coming out of this?
Well, there are a few things. I mean, they're hoping to, in essence, do something that the Democrats did back in the day of Richard Nixon. You know, back when Richard Nixon wasn't impeached, but obviously he resigned from office, they did hold impeachment hearings. And so the theory goes, at least in the Democrat circles, is that if they can hold impeachment hearings at some point, that all of a sudden the president will plummet in terms of public support. That's what happened to Richard Nixon. The problem here is that there were plenty of smoking guns with Richard Nixon. There was the break-in, have you heard? There were the secret tapes, of course, Saturday Night Massacre, all of that. No smoking guns here with President Trump. That seems to be a big difference in terms of what Democrats are trying to accomplish here.
Well, aren't they flying in the face of the polls? I mean, there's a recent poll showing that Democrats are now viewing the Mueller investigation as unfair, and these aren't elected officials, these are rank and file voters, are saying, we think this thing is unfair. Aren't they flying in the face of what the polls are saying?
Absolutely. It's interesting, Gordon. I'm glad you mentioned that poll, because that is a new poll out with some new information among Democrats, and then just overall with Americans, 60% or so, and it's held pretty firm. 60% of Americans don't want to see anything to do with impeachment. So what are the Democrats up to here? You know, we've heard a lot about how the Mueller report is the book, but people like the movie better than the book, and that the Mueller hearing will be the movie. I don't really see it as a movie. I see it more like a book on tape. You know, like Stephen King, for example. It's a scary novel when you read it. But imagine if Stephen King was reading it to you at bedtime. How much scarier would it be? And I think that's what Democrats are hoping for, to actually have Robert Mueller be a la Stephen King and read this, not just read the report, but actually explain to the American people that indeed the president was not exonerated like the president said. And that was some of the testimony that we're hearing today, that Mueller in essence saying, no, the president was not exonerated. And that flies in the face of what President Trump has publicly said. And so this is the PR battle going on, and something Republicans and the president are going to have to deal with.
You have any anticipation of what would be a line of questioning to get to that kind of analysis?
Well, it just depends. I mean, first of all, I can tell you this, that Robert Mueller, it's interesting, made clear in that opening statement talking about basically, I can't answer any questions about the Steele dossier that we've heard so much about. And that is a line of questioning that Republicans want to talk to Mueller about. So he has already kind of laid down a marker and said, I'm not going to go there. And then he laid down a few other markers. And so I just think this whole thing, the way it's playing out is very interesting. But ultimately, I think there's a lot of problems for Democrats here because, look, the networks are carrying this live. And I don't just mean CNN and MSNBC. I'm talking about the major networks, NBC, ABC, CBS. When does it become overkill? I mean, at some point on CBS, aren't people going to want to watch The Price is Right? I mean, the point simply is, when is enough enough? And I think that bodes well for President Trump to say, look, been there, done that, nothing new here. Let's move on. Well,
the president has taken heat in the media for his criticism of the four progressive Democrats he's calling the squad. What kind of toll has that taken?
Well, this is a toll that we're going to monitor daily, weekly, monthly, and all the way through 2020. You know, it's funny because it started out as a 24 to 48-hour news cycle. That's typically how things in Washington work. But Donald Trump on Twitter and the squad in person have turned it into a news cyclone. And now it really is, as I've said on Faith Nation, a new contour in this race. You know, we've talked about socialism being a contour, a defining contour between Democrats' vision for America and the president's vision for America. Well, now we have another contour layered on top of that, which is, and it plays along a little bit with socialism, which is, how American are you, and what does it mean to be an American exactly? I mean, there are folks within the squad who want to, as Donald Trump says, redefine America. And then there's Donald Trump talking about making America great again and now keeping America great. That is the major contour. And Donald Trump believes that if he can pit the squad versus his message, that's a winning message, because even though Donald Trump might not be the most popular president in the world, his approval ratings are far more higher than Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, and the rest of the squad.
Well, is he willing to continue to do that? I know there was a pretty significant pushback to the "send them back" chant. I, for one, don't want to go back to the British Isles. I think they're in worse shape than we are right now. So is he going to respond to that kind of pushback? Is he going to let that chant continue at future rallies?
Well, we're going to find out at the next rally. He says he disavows it. He says he didn't like it. Then he seemed to walk it back a little bit a day or two after he said that. So I guess we'll find out at the next rally for sure. I do believe, though, within the White House that there's going to be a modified approach. But modified, what does that mean exactly? Like I said, stay tuned. But I'll just simply say that the White House believes this type of contour, at least, does work for them electorally, politically, and otherwise from a PR standpoint. But the White House does acknowledge that some of that rhetoric, especially the sender back chants and the actual words "go back," it's just fraught with all sorts of problems for the White House that they don't need right now.
All right, last question. The budget deal hammered out with Pelosi. It looks like runaway spending is the order of the day. Do you think that budget deal is going to make it through?
Yeah, I do, because I think in Washington nowadays, this is what you get. I mean, if you think about it, you have Democrats who would love to spend, and you have a Freedom Caucus trying to hold the line on spending. But other than that, you have pretty much establishment conservatives that'll go along with what the Democrats want. And then here's the key, Gordon. You have a president who has done a lot of great things in conservative evangelical world and conservative world overall. But let's be honest, he's not a fiscal conservative. This is not a bread and butter issue in terms of deficit and debt and all of that. I mean, even though the economy is obviously very important, that's number one for this president. When it comes to spending on infrastructure and a lot of other different things, he just wants to make sure defense spending is taken care of and veteran benefits are taken care of. That's what this budget does. That's why you see some skyrocketing numbers here. The Freedom Caucus will hold steady, but I think it'll pass.
All right. Well, David, thanks for joining.